to be diabetes. What is the history as during early childhood growth and development? Does the patient have some level of education about diabetes? Because if the patient is educated having education about diabetes, it is much easier for this patient to manage his diabetes on his own once you have put him on a therapeutic strategy. Because all the patients with diabetes, I think diabetes education is a very integral and important component of diabetes management. The more informed a patient is, the better he can manage diabetes and better are the outcomes. And we know this from a lot of data that we have. Then we have to look at what is the previous treatments he is taking and what has been the response to therapy, what kind of HbA1c levels he has been maintaining earlier. Unfortunately, we don't have A1C levels for most of the patients in our setting, so we may not get that, but we do get the blood sugar values which patients are having earlier. Then whether this patient has been getting some hypoglycemic episodes. If he is getting hypoglycemic episodes, is he aware of the symptoms of hypoglycemia, or did he suffer from severe hypoglycemia sometime and needed hospitalization and so on? Does the patient have any history of suggestive any complications relating to microvascular or macrovascular structures? Any suggestion of retinopathy, nephropathy in terms of having anemia or swelling of feet and facial puffiness? Any suggestions of having neuropathy in terms of having vague pains and so on, which I'll take in the next few slides. And of course, you must also look for the history of any psychosocial problems and also dental disease. The physical examination should include a height, weight measurement, calculation of body mass index, and of course waist circumference in Indian setting is very important because we have something which is central obesity. It is not the generalized obesity which is very common in India. It is more of central obesity, and central obesity is very high risk for development of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So measurement of waist circumference is also very important, and as I just told you during the IDF slide, that we are supposed to have a normal, lower normals for the waist cutoff for waist circumference, which is 90 centimeters for males and 80 centimeters for females. Then we have to look for blood pressure, including the changes with posture, evaluation of peripheral pulses, whether they are all present or there are some absent pulses in lower limbs suggestive of peripheral arterial disease, a fundus examination, a thyroid examination, and skin examination for acanthosis nigricans, for insulin injection sites, whether there is any lipoatrophy, for any fungal infections, and so on. So oral examination is also important. You should also go for a regular cardiac check. If the patient has already some data or some records of early cardiac problems, they should be documented. Abdominal examination for presence of an enlarged liver, which will suggest possibly this patient has NASH or non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or so-called fatty liver. Hands and finger and feet examination for any evidence of neuropathic features like dystrophy of interosseous muscles, clawing of toes, ulcerations, and so on. For blood pressure should be measured on every single visit the patient is coming to you, and if the patient has more than 130/80 on more than 2 occasions, then patient should be classified as person having hypertension and should be managed accordingly. The A1C levels, if they are available in last 2 to 3 months, they are important. If they are not, you should get a A1C tested. Other tests, if they are available in last 6 months to 1 year, you can use those values for basing your therapeutic strategy. But if they are not available, these tests should be performed at least once a year, which include a complete lipid profile, liver function test, urine albumin excretion, that is the urine albumin or microalbumin also, serum creatinine levels and calculated GFR, A TSH level, particularly if the patient is dyslipidemic or women more than 50 years or patient is type 1 diabetes. A1C should be tested at least twice a year if the patient is having good control or the glycemic targets are achieved. If the patient is not well controlled, A1C should be tested every 3 months. And now we have availability of A1C testing as a spot test or point of care testing, but most of these are not standardized. The advantage is they give you, advantage of not calling the patient again for a test or getting a test and waiting for the report. So you can have a spot report. But they are not very standardized and they may not be very accurate. That is one of the disadvantages of point of care testing. Now this from A1C you can calculate the estimated average glucose over last 3 months, and 6 A1C denotes a calculated average of 126. Over this add 28 for every 1% rise and you will get the estimated average glucose. For dyslipidemia, most of the adult patients should have a measured, a measurement of fasting lipid levels at least once every year. If the person, falls in the category of low risk lipid profile, that is, total cholesterol is LDL cholesterol is less than 100, HDL is more than 50, and triglycerides are less than 150. Then maybe you can keep a lipid check every 2 years. Earlier, it was recommended that all the patients should be screened intensively for presence of cardiovascular disease. Now, routine screening for coronary artery disease is not recommended because if you are treating the risk factors, then virtually you are treating everything that changes the outcomes of coronary artery disease. So, separate screening for coronary artery disease is not recommended from the current ADA recommendations. Urine albumin excretion should be checked every year. For type 1 patients, start checking 5 years from the diagnosis. For type 2 patients, start checking from the immediate, first time of diagnosis. Serum creatinine should be measured every year again and should be used for estimating the glomerular filtration rate. And based on that, you can classify the patient into nephropathy or renal failure or chronic kidney disease. The albumin excretion in urine is very important because it is not only a marker of endothelial dysfunction in kidney, it is a high risk, it denotes very high risk for cardiovascular disease. And it is defined as a albumin excretion between 30 to 300 in a spot sample of urine or more than 300 milligrams between 30 to 300 milligrams per 24 hours in a 24 hours urinary collection. So, if you have between these values, this is defined as microalbuminuria, and more than 300 per 24 hours or more than 300 microgram per gram of creatinine is defined as clinical albuminuria. And once the person reaches the clinical albuminuria stage, that means patient has entered into the nephropathy, clinical nephropathy, and this is a stage which is non-reversible. Microalbuminuria is a stage which is potentially reversible and should be aggressively treated also. You should continue monitoring the albumin excretion both in response to therapy and also look for whether it is progressive and is worsening into nephropathy. When the estimated GFR is less than 60, you have to evaluate, manage the potential complications of this chronic kidney disease. Consider at this point reference to a nephrologist. This is the table showing various classes of estimated GFR. If there is kidney damage, which is defined as presence of abnormalities in urine sample or blood sample, but the estimated GFR is more than 90. If it is less than 90 and more than 60 is defined as mildly decreased GFR, between 30 to 60 is defined as moderately decreased, less than 30 up to 15 is severely decreased, and less than 15 the person is in kidney failure or is on dialysis. Yearly measurement of creatinine, urinary albumin excretion and potassium levels is recommended for all. If the estimated GFR is between 40